Hello you, this is the last daily rundown of the week with me, Dan Morfitt. Tonight we'll be discussing, amongst many things, junior doctors, climate change, America and football. Everything you want from a rundown of all the daily stories. But first, let's welcome tonight's guests. It's working chap, friend of badgers and enemy of voles, comedian Stephen Armstrong.
Good evening,
Thank
Squire,
you for joining us again.
Yes.
Also joining us again is economic researcher on the UK, India, Bangladesh and the EU, amongst many other things. Wendy Olsen, thanks. Stephen and Wendy, you're going to be spending time with us on the Daily Rundown, so on your head be it. And don't forget, you can get involved too, because it's just not us three talking all night. You can be part of the conversation as well. Go to Twitter, go to @TheDailyRundown and give us your missives, because it will give producer Emmy something to do during the show. Let's look at our first story now. Junior doctors are to escalate their strike action with a full withdrawal of labour for the first time in the history of the NHS. That's going to be raising fears that patients will be put in harm's way. The complete walkout is scheduled for the 26th and 27th of April, and it will include everyone up to a consultant level. Previous industrial action by junior doctors has seen emergency cover provided. Now, the British Medical Association, the BMA, blamed the move on the continued refusal by the government to step back from its decision to impose a new contract on junior doctors from August of this year and resolve the disputes by re-entering talks. But the Department of Health has condemned the move as desperate and irresponsible and claimed it would inevitably put patients in harm's way. So, will this tug of war ever end? And which side do you think needs to back down and compromise? Wendy?
The government. I mean, they're seeing the hospitals as a business, so they're trying to squeeze these workers. And these are the most educated workers you can imagine, taking years of study. So I really think they should negotiate and they should cave in and give way. And so do the senior doctors. So the British Medical Association has these senior doctors, and they have a contract renegotiation coming up as well. So the real question I would put to you is, will the senior doctors come in and work and do the work of the junior doctors when the junior doctors really go out? I hope they won't.
I think of these new strikes happening possibly in April. The only cover will be emergency cover and the very senior doctors. There's got to be lots of people walking out on this day.
They need to reschedule a lot of these operations. So for each individual, it's an absolute tragedy and a crisis to have to reschedule. But the purpose of a strike is to force those negotiations to move forward rather than people being intransigent. The government is being intransigent.
From what I've heard today, the BMA and junior doctors as a whole have been wanting to go to ACAS and wanted to continue negotiations. The government won't have any of it. So, Stephen, do you think this is maybe the government's last chance to turn the public against the junior doctors' decision and their reasons not for signing this new contract?
Well, I'm dangerously close to 40 years old, so I was born in 1976, so I am not old enough to fully remember the miners' conflict, but that was the last major kind of government against an industry, and I would hope that it's not the same kind of efforts of the government to try and turn general opinion against the doctors. I mean, it seems that every time we're on I'm on the show, because it is, as you say, an issue that's dragged on for quite some time. We have to get to a point where obviously the doctors, but I don't think any doctor gets into the health service for the money. So if they are choosing to withdraw their labour, that's what they do. They don't join. You don't join a profession to save lives to only just then turn around and go, do you know what? If I'm a bit upset with my contract, I'll just chuck my labour in. I do think that the government are playing a dangerous game, and it's the general public's lives that they're playing with. The doctors are playing with it as well. Both sides are playing this dangerous game, but generally...
What I find interesting about it is not even good management. So a good, well-run firm will negotiate and they'll get a settlement. And they might think, well, I'm not happy with that settlement. I'll work on it again next year. And the ones that are having a disagreement, they negotiate every year. If there's no disagreement and it's all calm, then they'll have a negotiation with, say, 5-year agreement on wages.
Do you think it is going beyond... They've taken a Hippocratic oath to care for people and make them better. But do you think this almost fighting just to get standards up to modern day standards, working on a Saturday is one of them?
You've misunderstood it completely. Okay. They're striking because it's not safe for them to work such long hours. They're striking because they don't want their families to be damaged by this.
But surely the NHS has to do a very big cost-benefit analysis. They are the supreme
It's not the NHS that is generating this strike. It's the government. The government is acting on behalf of the fiscal tightening and let's cut.
To play devil's advocate, the NHS is seen as this almost sacrosanct religious institution that we can't touch. It's not as old as people think it is.
But do you think there's any of those operations or any of those A&E services that are optional? Do you think they could just maybe not do it? No. Each one, we already know that we only give the healthcare if something is really important. So there isn't any of those that are optional. It can't be cut back.
I think that, first of all, yes, the doctors have taken a Hippocratic oath, but the MPs are public servants, and I don't remember Jeremy Hunt asking us whether he thinks we should give the doctors what they want. And also, I just think that, for me, the idea that everybody should be treated equal is a really good idea and it should permeate society. But when we deal with professions, and my profession is I deal with complaints, I resolve complaints. If somebody enforces a contract on me that I don't accept, my job resolving complaints is at risk. I'm not a doctor, so I don't think my contract should be treated the same as the doctors. Personally, I think doctors, policemen, public transport workers, I think these people, these groups of people, their contracts should be removed from this tit for tat. We always hear this public-private things. I used to work in the public sector, and you get a lot of people saying, well, you get your public sector pensions are great, and no, you got fantastic, and our private sector pensions are worse. Different people have different conditions.
But doctors surely know when they're going into this profession of the long hours that's ahead of them. They know it's not going to be easy. It's not as if it's...
But they're not going to have enough doctors if they make the rules like this, to force them to work on weekends, to force them to not receive any extra bonus payment.
But are we wanting them to work on weekends?
They shouldn't have to work for no extra pay on the weekends. There has to be some sort of incentive for it.
But from what I understand of the government...
There's going to be doctors withdrawing all over the place.
What I understand of the government, they're just trying to change the payment systems so that Saturday working is normalised. We, as patients, want to use an NHS at the weekends because we work in the week, there's different shift patterns now. People don't work on Monday to Friday anymore, so they might have to go to a hospital on a...
Well, you speak for yourself. So if
I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking as a devil's advocate.
Then you might not think Saturday and Sunday are special, but as soon as you've had any children, you'll be thinking, oh, I want that Saturday. I have to clean the house. I have to make sure that the sports are happening. I have to get all the clothes sorted out. The food shopping has to happen. And I want to do it with my family. So Saturday and Sunday is when the schools are closed. And that's when these people need to be with their families. And,
so you're saying
that
Britain should just close on a Saturday and Sunday then? Is that what you're saying?
I favoured the Sunday, the Sunday trading bill.
Yes, but we're never going to go back to those days because you like having shops open on a Saturday morning, 24 hours. And I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the general populace. Surely one of the problems with this is, as patients of the NHS, we think it should be there at our beck and call, free at the point of use at all time. And then we see these statistics where there's more deaths on a Saturday and Sunday because there's not as many people there. Well, surely there's an onus on us as patients. If we want a better health service, if we want better paid junior doctors, shouldn't we be saying we pay more tax?
Dan, maybe, but the first thing you said, you're in cloud cuckoo land if you think that you can just force the doctors to work on weekends. There are not enough doctors, so that we can just barely get enough of them to cover the week, and we can't get a load more and make them each work 40 hours a week. So that's why they have to work 70 hours a week. It's an unbelievable situation of scarcity.
But they're already out of the European Working Time Directive. They know that. They sign that before they take it.
But it's not good.
It's not good,
just
but that's
borderline
how it is.
Unsafe, and it's bad for their families. So these two injuries, when you take the Hippocratic Oath, right, you're saying you're going to protect health, but you have to look at other people's health, your family and your partner as well.
But what you're basically advocating is a shutdown of health services at the weekend.
No. I'm saying it should be an attractive occupation. That's part of the negotiation that has to take place.
So attractive occupation or vocation, what is it?
I think it's a vocation. I think that there are many professions that are there are certain jobs that people do, and it is what you do for a job. You work for a company. You do this. I work as a complaints officer. But if you are a teacher or a nurse, that's not a job. That's a vocation. That is a profession. And yes, they go into it knowing that they are going into this. They go in with their eyes open. But that doesn't mean that I just think that for me, I don't mind the National Health Service losing this. For me, the ideas of putting a business capitalist model, profit and loss model onto the National Health Service, the idea of a working time study to be done, we should be working on the principle that the National Health Service should be based on the fact that if you are ill, you go to it. If they have the ability to give you the medication, they should be able to do that. We have enough problems nowadays with just personally speaking, one of my family members has a fairly serious health condition. He's had to move to a different county because the county he lived in wouldn't give him the medicine, whereas the new county will give him the new medicine.
Which shows that the NHS, the National Health Service, isn't the same everywhere that you are.
No.
But surely it should stem down to us as taxpayers, us as patients of the NHS. Sometimes we've got to look at ourselves and just think, if we want the world's greatest free healthcare system at the point of use, we need to pay more for it.
I don't mind paying my tax. I don't, it's only a myth that people don't want to pay their tax.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a firm believer that you should. If you present at a hospital and you say, I need medical help, and you say, well, why do you need medical help? And you say, well, I decided to drink a whole bottle of cinnamon, and I've now come into the National Health Service. I'm fully behind you turning that person around and sending them out the door, because if you choose to do something like that, then fine. But I mean, if you present at the National Health Service, I think I'm a firm believer that if you present showing your level of what I would term as a Trump level of idiocy, then I think you should just be turned around and span out on your toes.
There's been some adverts on the radio lately about this, saying you should be responsible for your own health. Take responsibility.
I think on that, we've gone some way to solving this contract dispute. Some way, I think.
I wouldn't like to negotiate with you.
I'm hardball. Right, time for a quick break now, but the three of us will be back in just a couple of minutes to discuss more of the news on the Daily Rundown. So get your kettle on and see you in a couple of minutes.